Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Credit Safe webinar. My name is Nathan Kolb. I am your host today and most days, and very privileged to get to do that. I'm going through a bunch of different things today, but before we start, I want to do what I always do and let you know kind of the basics of how this works, because in all reality, what we really want is to be able to engage with you. We want to talk back and forth with you. If that's not happening, then while this isn't a bust, it's definitely not as good as we would like it to be. So the way you engage with us is you look down at the bottom of your screen that's showing up with myself and our speaker, and you see a little text bubble that says Q&A above it. Go ahead, type in there anything that's going on. If there's an issue, if there's a problem, if there's a comment you want to make, if there's a question that you have at any point during the webinar today, please go ahead and leave it there. I will be monitoring that the entire time, and we'll get to your questions as appropriate, as quickly as I can. And we'll kind of have the dialogue going on through that. So if you want to talk to me, if you want to talk to our speaker, what have you, questions, anything like that, you just drop it in there. We'll take care of it. The other thing I do need to let you know is that this webinar is being recorded. So if that's a problem for you or your company, please go ahead and exit now. We're just giving you a fair disclaimer on that. And then because it's being recorded, we are going to follow up with you with this recording. So if there's something that comes up that you see that you want to know about more, or you wanted to write down a link or some specific quote or something, and you missed it, don't worry about it. There's going to be a follow-up email in the next 24 to 48 hours. And you will get all the information, including any links that we talk about, any information that we talk about, as well as the recording to this video webinar right now. So all the disclaimers are out of the way, all that stuff is done, and now I can start talking about what we're going to go today. And today is the fourth webinar in a joint series between the National Association of Wholesaler-Distributors and Credit Safe. And if you're coming in from either of those organizations, we're going to give you a little background about each one, and then we'll talk about the topic at hand today. But the National Association of Wholesaler Distributors, the NAW, is the national voice of the wholesale distribution industry in Washington, D.C. NAW provides high value to its members and the wholesale distribution industry by advocating the interests of the distribution companies before the government, providing groundbreaking distribution-specific research and strategic management best practices via conferences, publications, and webcasts, and providing leading-edge products and services highly valued by industry peers. As the world's most used provider of business intelligence, Credit Safe owns and maintains one of the most comprehensive and rapidly expanding business databases with credit information on over 365 million companies worldwide. They're changing the way business information is used by offering a collection of products and solutions that help companies leverage their domestic and international credit reports, company data, principal information, domestic and international judgments, and credit scores to make smarter business decisions. This series that we've been in called Cash is Still King focus on 4 key areas of business that have changed due to the pandemic, yet have that consistent thread of cash is still king, and cash being the king in today's market. Each area has multiple webinars that have featured experts, thought leaders, and practitioners to provide insight and analysis on how you can move forward in an uncertain economy and make smarter business decisions. So we're finishing up. We're on our 4th webinar of 9, and it's the end of the second topic, which is automation and integration. And today's webinar will focus on the importance of integration and automation, specifically from a practitioner's perspective. So specifically from someone who has been there, done that's perspective. In today's business environment, it's crucial to utilize the available business information that's at your fingertips and to integrate it with existing systems and solutions within your company, as we're all being asked to do more with less and in a much more virtual and flexible environment. So I'm very, very thankful and very pleased to welcome back to the webinar someone who's been here before. So if you're a fan of our webinars, I don't know if we actually have fans, but if we do, and you know a bunch of the webinars that we've done, you will recognize the gentleman here, and you will recognize this bio I'm about to read. But Michael Kohler is the principal solution architect for Sorala. With over 10 years experience working in the order to cash field, Michael's present and previous roles have given given him unique insight into best practices in managing credit and compliance risks, as well as collections operations for businesses of various sizes and industry. And Michael is a consummate professional. He's great to have on these webinars, and he's just a joy always to work with and to be with. So I'm glad to have him back. Michael, thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me, and I'll give that compliment right back to you. You're always great to work with as well.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's always fun, and you know we've got to make it fun because like I just said on an earlier live today, where I was actually the guest and not the host, which was very awkward and very odd for me. It was you know, data and business information and all of this type of stuff isn't exactly the sexiest thing out there. But if we can have fun with it and we can make it relatable and we can make it practical and valuable for folks, then we're really doing our job and we're doing it well. And that's what we always try to do here. And you're great at doing that. So excited to talk a little bit about, you know, automation and integration, which is sort of buzzwords right now. Those are sort of things that you just hear a lot, kind of the same with the word pivot, WFH, and, you know, all those things that have suddenly become massively important in our lexicon. This idea of automation and integration is something that a lot of companies are looking at and have been, but I think the pandemic has really started to bring a great focus on that because they're not able to necessarily hire new people just to do a job. They have to have that stuff working, or now all of a sudden we can't bring you in and we can't have you in place with us where we can just hand things to each other, or we can, you know, send it easily through interoffice mail or something like that. We really do have to have those integrated systems and those automated systems that make it work for all of us. So I'm looking forward to this. And I'm just going to jump in if you would. You know, first things, can you just provide an overview or maybe even like a working definition that we can use for this webinar? Because it is a buzzword for both automation and integration as it applies to this area of, you know, business data, business intelligence, business information, whatever that we can kind of use for this webinar.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's interesting, Ethan, actually, that you would mention that, you know, this has been like at the forefront now for companies to look for like automation and integration. Interestingly, we thought like from a like technological like or technology community point of view is that automation and integration was something, you know, that companies achieved like 3 years ago. And now they're looking for like artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all those fancy things. But it's actually interesting that the COVID, I'm going to say the C word a couple of times, I think, in this webinar, has brought us kind of more back to the roots again. And it's just like, let's do the basics really well. Right. And then we can focus on artificial intelligence and machine learning. But like before we get into like fancy new stuff, let's quickly make sure we got our bases covered, right?
Right. Before we install a neural network, let's try and figure out that the basics are working, right?
Exactly. And so if you're asking for like a working definition, so maybe we can take a step back and look at the bigger picture here a little for a while. Because like what companies essentially do in their, you know, credit management process is they, you know, and our audience knows that better than the two of us together. You know, they look at credit reports, make credit decisions, review accounts hopefully on an ongoing basis, onboard new customers and such. And most companies are using a tool for that, or are proactively looking to get help with some kind of tool to help them, you know, make more with less, or to optimize their process. And when we talk about integration, it's exactly that, like, you know, integrating that business intelligence data into a credit management system. So, you know, I think for the purpose of this webinar, I think that that's the definition we probably want to go with. And John actually said that on Tuesday, and when he was talking about automation and integration from like technology perspective, it's about getting the data into the process, or getting the right information into the process correctly.
Right. And just to let anybody know that it wasn't on the webinar on Tuesday, what Michael's referring to is CreditSafe CTO John Siri joined me on Tuesday to talk about automation and integration from kind of an expert technological perspective. So if you want to do that, you can just go to creditsafe.com/webinars, and you can see the recording of that there. Nice little plug. I appreciate you letting me do that. Okay, so we've got the big picture. You've given me that on the big picture. What do you want to mean when you specifically are talking about integration from a practitioner's perspective? So it's different than that one that we were just talking about that John gave of integration. But when you're on the ground, you're doing it every day. You are the one actually making this work. What are we looking at when we're looking at that, when we're talking about integration?
So I think to make it very simple, we can probably put that into two categories, like, or levels of integration. There is either the option of integrating the entire like credit report into your credit management system, or just pieces of it. So typically, when companies look to integrate, they would typically at least take like the score and rating and credit opinion or recommended credit limit out of the credit report, and put that into their credit management system, or to make it more professional and to get a more comprehensive view, you can take the entire credit report and integrate that in your credit management system.
Okay. And I mean, you mentioned, we're talking about this and we're kind of assuming that we see this as important, but why? Why is this important comparatively to just, why can't we just pull a credit report, sit it there, do the whole thing? I mean, why is this idea of integration so important?
And I mean, it sounds simple enough, but many companies actually haven't really done that step of integration yet with their credit reports. They have a functioning credit management system, but they haven't really gotten to the step of integrating their credit reporting into the system, at least not on a more automated basis. But automation is something we're going to talk about as well, right, later on.
Sure.
But it is important for at least two reasons. First of all, I mean, the times that we're living in right now, with many companies sending their workforce to work from home, it is a huge advantage if you can work from a system that has all the information in one place. I'm going to throw out another buzzword here, one that I'm not a fan of buzzwords at all, but this one I like very much: the single source of truth.
Yes,
because this is something, even now that I'm working as a solution architect within our team, that we struggle with, like keeping information transparent and in one place, easily accessible to everyone, and not like, we're in a team meeting and then it's like, oh yeah, but I sent a document about that like 3 months ago, and everybody's like, oh yeah, but where, and then we have a shared network drive with, I kid you not, at least 100 subfolders. Like, who is going to find information in there, right? So the reality for many companies is they store their credit reports. I mean, they log into, let's say, the CreditSafe portal, pull the report, and have it there. Sometimes, or many times, they download it as a PDF and store that somewhere on their, shared network drive. And then people will just have to know like which folders to go into. But even then, if you're on a company network and working from home, and I also get this a lot, sometimes, the network is a little slow. So you want to open up a document, like even if it's just like, I don't know, 500 kilobytes, it takes like a minute to open up that document. So that's a little cumbersome. So, there's this perspective, or this aspect of working from home and making information centrally accessible. So obviously this is why integration is so important. But even if, we are working in an office environment, we didn't have those challenges of working from home, integration would still be important, because it makes for better decision making for one. So for example, I have a couple of actually scenarios that I could think of. So you have a new customer, you pull a credit report on them, and then, the credit limit that they are asking for, that sales is asking for them, is a little high. So it has to go up like, I don't know, through like 3, 4, or 5 levels of approval. And, sometimes those decision makers within the company, they want to, not just rely on the write-up that the credit professional does. They want to look at the hard data themselves. So that is kind of a problem sometimes. If you're working with emails and stuff, then yeah, of course, it's easy to attach the credit report. But then if you work within a more professional system and the approver, has all the information either on their screen or their mobile device, but, they don't have access to that credit report, it makes it sometimes harder for them, because they don't have that data available, and they have to go back to, whoever requested the limit. And, there's just like needless exchange of communication, emails and information. And another scenario would be, for example, and we experience this quite a lot in shared service environments, where the responsibility of releasing blocked orders, because they're, the customer is on a credit hold, or like doesn't have sufficient credit limit, or they're, past due, or something like that. But that responsibility of releasing those credit holds lies mainly with the collectors. But of course, the collectors are trained, hopefully properly, to what to do, which data to look at before releasing an order, and not just go ahead and release the order regardless. And and not just talk about the overdues with the customer, but also, look at the situation that the customer is in, or even when making collection calls, look at, the situation that the company is in, and make a call and a decision based on that information. So it's vital for them to have access to at least some, easy to read points from a credit report as well, at least like a score, recommended limit. Of course, they probably won't be able to like read the financials properly, but at least like a score and a rating is like very easy to read even for a collector. So, it is very beneficial, and I would say of paramount importance even for them to have access to that kind of information as well.
Well, then, I mean, with that being said, and the importance of it, of how it's going, especially with what's going on in the world right now, why are we seeing companies still being a bit reticent to integrate their systems, to integrate this type of information into their systems, and to try and set this up for themselves?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I would say companies are reticent to do that. It's just like, if you present the idea to them, everybody is totally on board with that, especially, credit professionals. They're like, of course, we want everything integrated and single source of truth. Of course, we've been wanting that for years, right? So typically, at least in the past, what we've seen, because, Sorala works also in the treasury field and on the procure to pay side and order to cash side. So what we've seen as a general trend is sometimes, the AR space, specifically credit management, does not get the attention it merited from decision makers within the company. That is obviously changing now with, credit risk taking on a whole new meaning this year.
Yes.
But like, yeah, so typically, it wasn't really prioritized on the, like, let's say, technology journey in many companies, because there's more important business cases for other, technological innovations that, take priority. It just is what it is sometimes. And then also sometimes, people would say like, well, we've been working like this, manually inputting scores or like storing credit reports on our hard drives for years. So, and it has always worked well. So why would we change that because it's been working so well for us all this time? So it's kind of, it goes back to like the general challenge of change management within a company.
Okay.
So I would say those are probably the most two important factors there.
That makes total sense. So, okay, so we've talked a little bit about integration here and the importance of what that is. So then, what is the difference there between integration and automation? And is there a different value, or is it a different level of integration, or really, kind of explain to me the difference here and how it works?
So integration obviously is getting the data into the system, and automation concerns like the way you get the data into your system. And that can be either like an automated, or I would even say like maybe semi-automated way,
Okay.
or fully manual. It could be a fully manual process. So as I just said, so there's many companies, they have a scorecard system in place, but
Mm-hmm.
they also would like to integrate information from a credit report in their own scorecard system, which makes
Right.
total sense, and especially nowadays,
Oh,
where
sure.
outside that third-party credit agency information is just so much more important right now than it was maybe a year ago. But yeah, so then there's people that just like manually input like the rating, the score into their scorecard system. And as I said, for if you don't have a big customer base, maybe it doesn't really matter if you automate that process or not, if you're working with a smaller customer base. But like typically when you have a smaller customer base, you also don't have a lot of staff in
Right.
your team, so automation obviously on that regard always makes sense. Have some kind of mechanism to get that data into your system in an automated way. One thing that I want to say what automation is not giving up transparency. We heard that quite a bit, not so much anymore, but like when we would talk to people at conferences and trade shows like a couple of years ago, there was a big reticence within the credit community toward automation because, but because of the misconception that, they thought like, well, automation means are they getting rid of us as credit managers, which obviously is, so not the case, or so not the point of automation in the credit space. I mean,
Right.
in other spaces where you, replace a completely manual process with an automated process, I don't know, in invoice capturing or something, data capturing. Okay, yes, there it is. We want to like redeploy those, man hours we put into that cumbersome process. But like within the credit space, I would say automation does not mean giving up control. It actually means enhancing control. And why do I say that? Well, automation in this particular case that we're talking about right now, and with regards to credit agency data, means that, for example, when you have those monitoring updates, that hopefully everyone that gets a credit report for their most important customers, they subscribe to those monitoring updates, especially now. And John talked about that in his webinar on Tuesday
Absolutely.
as well. Getting those monitoring updates into your system just automatically as they come. So not like having to log into a portal, seeing like, oh, what's new? Not even like waiting for an email to come. An email is nice and to get notified about changes, and there is absolute value to that. And this also goes toward like not losing control. But at the same time, if, for example, credit safe rescore as a customer, and you get that monitoring update, it should like flow into your system right away and trigger a rescoring, an internal rescoring of your customer, so that the credit decisions you make or the orders the customer places, are not like judged by the information that's in the system that's outdated. So this
Right.
is where automation has a real value, not just in terms of like saving a lot of time that credit managers don't have anyways, but also helping them to be really proactive and getting on top of their risk portfolio.
Sure. Well, and I I would like to kind of add there too. I mean, we're taking out the oftentimes the holdup or the point, and I know nobody that's listening or paying attention here ever makes mistakes, but someone like me that actually makes mistakes and misses those things sometimes, or transposes a number or reads something incorrectly or what have you. It takes that away, because automatically, like you said, if a score changes, then that sets off a set of decisions that you've already made. You've already said, this is what will happen when this happens. You as the company have done this. Skynet has not come in with the robots to take over and make the decisions for you. You've just told the automation that if these things happen, then I want you to do this for me, so that I don't even miss it. I don't ever have to worry about it. And then when you have your audits and your reviews and those type of things, it's already been done. And you don't have to worry that, oh, I missed that one, and that one suddenly becomes your Achilles heel. You just have it. It's done. You don't have to worry about it. And then if there's something that's outside of those parameters, then you can actually spend your expertise and your effort on those.
Exactly.
And like you said, that's where the robots can't take over. We need that. We need people that can do that and make those evaluations and all of that, and use their experience and expertise. So awesome. So I mean, we've been talking about how things have been and are and changing and all of that, but there's been this discussion for a while around the idea of data science and keeping the clean database, clean data, another buzzword, right? That single source of truth of clean data. First of all, what are we talking about here? Again, a buzzword, so maybe we need to actually break it down, because people use it and don't know what it means and all that. So give me what that actually is.
Yeah, I think clean data is a unicorn that doesn't really exist. Let's be realistic. And I've worked with a lot of companies over the years, and a clean database, or like having all your ducks in a row for your master data, is just a big challenge, and not because, there is a lack of expertise in companies, mm-hmm. but it's just due to the nature of today's economy. So we see more and more businesses coming together through mergers and acquisitions. I mean, sure. Sorala is a textbook example for that as well. With that, you merge customer databases, mm-hmm. And then also over time, there is just not the staff sometimes that has the time to monitor of what's getting into the database and who did what, and there's just historical garbage in there, right. That it's, and then if you have a big customer base, it just gets very difficult to handle. So, having a clean database ideally would mean having all your customer accounts set up correctly with the right address. So, right. I mean, that's even more important than, maybe not having duplicates, but have the right address in there, because that is very important when, we don't hope ever that we won't get into a legal procedure with a customer, but if it goes that way and you do not have the right address, you risk of getting whatever you submit to the court thrown out just because, I don't know, the address, the street is spelled incorrectly. Oh, it is missing an L in there, just right. Something as simple as that, So when we talk about clean database, it's basically have the correct data in there, and also make sure your customers are not set up multiple times in an unintentional way, because there's also, sometimes you do want to have a customer set up with various accounts because you have different soul tools, but that's a different story, obviously. Sure. There you just have to make sure you link them in a way that you see which customers actually belong together as, being the same account but having different numbers in our system.
Right. I mean, it can be something as simple as, your name, my name is a great example, that the salesperson calls you Mike and types in Mike in the point of contact, setup, and everything else has Michael on it. And all of a sudden now we have a problem. It's not clean data anymore. Like you said, the unicorn is not there anymore. That absolutely. And so with that being said, how does this idea of integration, especially of third-party data, actually help solve some of the problems there?
So I think there's two aspects here. First of all, it can help with that linkage. If you, especially, if you pull like a report that has, the company structure information in it, like, who's the domestic ultimate parent, who's the global holding of that company, what are the different subsidiaries, I know, CreditSafe does a great job in putting that into their credit reports. So if you get that information into your system, it can actually help you, compare that against your database and see like, okay, where are those accounts that we need to link together because they're basically, from a risk perspective, the same. But I mean, I'm just like simplifying just like so much because this is something that we could talk about for 3 hours, and we have done actually in workshops
Sure.
with companies. Like we have spent like sometimes 3 to 4 hours just talking about relationships between customer accounts, right? So I'm just like oversimplifying basically, but like, so on the one hand, that integration of credit reporting can help you to link those accounts together, and also it can help you to compare the data, the master data you have for your customer accounts. Like a perfect integration would mean that I see the, CreditSafe address on the credit report on the left side and my customer data on the right side, and I put them together, compare, and hopefully they line up. If not, hopefully my system will allow me to like trigger some kind of workflow to let the master data people know, hey, you need to update this, or we need to look into this if it needs updating in our case. Right.
And then, well, so we've got that, it's integrated now, but does that affect the automation at all? We were talking about how integration and automation work together. Does this idea of clean data or of scrubbing your data or whatever actually help with the automation? Does it hurt it? Does it matter at all to it? I mean, where are we at with that?
Yeah, I mean, it would be just wonderful if we had that button that we can push, and then all of a sudden your customer database is just perfectly neat and in order, right?
It's true. Yes.
Obviously, I mean, automation can help like bringing the data in from like a third-party provider such as CreditSafe.
Mm-hmm.
But there again, you need someone actually in control,
Right.
making that, especially when it comes to like, updating a master data, not like having anything overwritten like automatically. Automation would mean that I can pull a report seeing like, oh, hey, this is where I have a disconnect or a mismatch. But then, and then if I click a button, okay, it like overwrites or updates the address in my master data. But while it is possible to do everything like in one batch, like fully automated, we would never obviously recommend that because, of for the sake of control, because it is a very important data item that we're talking about, like, customer address and points of contact and such. So, that's why sometimes I like to say it's semi-automated, whatever that means, right? But there's some automation in place, but you still have a level of control over what's happening.
Right. Okay. And folks, any questions out there, please go ahead and do that. I have one final question that I'm going to ask you, Michael, and if we get any questions, then great. And if not, we'll say goodbye. But from your perspective, and I understand that it's just your opinion, your perspective, but what are the kind of the keys or the most important things that everyone that is involved in this space should know about automation and integration? What are those, if they had to have those 2 or 3 or 5 or whatever number you come up with, things that they really needed to know to take from this webinar, what would those be?
I'm going back to a buzzword again, single source of truth. That is hopefully the main takeaway that I would like people to get a takeaway from this webinar. Really aim for that, like have everything in one place, because it makes collaboration easier. It makes better decision making. And especially, I mean, in the credit risk space, you need transparency, so integrating hopefully not just a score or a rating from a credit report, but the entire credit report into your credit management system, really goes a long way with helping you to stay on top of things and help people along the chain that need to make decisions or give approvals have access to that information as well, and make better and faster decisions.
Okay. And we got one question here for you of when doing updates, or when there are updates being done, what are some tips on making sure that this type of integration can be included? So if I'm assuming if they're upgrading from, one system to another, or adapting from one thing to another, what are some tips on making sure that the credit, that the third party business information gets kind of considered in this whole thing?
Well, my advice would be to look out for, that specific capability within whatever system you're upgrading. And also make sure to go with, how do I say this politically correctly? Don't let your IT do it, basically, because and it's not. I mean, they probably would be hesitant to do it anyways because they're just so overloaded with everything.
Sure.
But because if you go with a standard provider of such, an integration, it is, because through the, subscription or whatever you're paying on a regular basis, you're also entitled to maintenance, and it's the integrator that takes care of making sure that integration works. Because if we go back to Tuesday's webinar, where John explained so how does this work on a technological level? How do we integrate? How do we pull information in? Obviously, if you do a file transfer, but even a file transfer, maybe the file, the columns are in a different order all of a sudden, and you want to upload the file and, it just doesn't work anymore. So, if that was something that your IT would need to take care of, then, you could be in for a long ride of having this fixed. Whereas, if you go with a standard integrator, they will always make sure that this integration always works when, for example, CreditSafe updates their API because, they upgrade stuff. The integrator will make sure that that interface to CreditSafe will still work with your credit management system, right? So that's, probably my advice. Don't go for a standard integrator versus let your IT do it.
Right. Yeah. Versus a custom build from your company. Something that can be maintained and everything. Yeah, that makes complete sense. Well, Michael, that is all the questions we have here. I am so thankful to have you on here every time, and I learn something new each and every time. I hope you guys that are watching and listening have as well. And just want to thank you for being on here, and I want to let you folks know that again, this is the 4th in a 9-part series. So the next topic that we're dealing with is business leveraging data and business intelligence for growth. And the next webinar that we have will be Tuesday, October 20th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, and where we will be speaking with Lena Chindamo all about this idea of how to leverage that business data and business intelligence for growth specifically. So that's gonna be a great one. Again, that's on Tuesday, October 20th. And at any time, any day or night, you want to see all the webinars that we have going on or see any of the past webinars that we have, don't hesitate to visit us on the web. Just go to creditsafe.com/webinars. And from CreditSafe, Sarala, Michael, myself, I want to say thank you and have a great rest of your day, folks.